A starter kit like this contains everything you need to start painting with acrylics. The question is, can you make a good painting from it? Well, let's find out. So this kit was provided by Meeden, and it contains a lot of supplies. It comes with a mini easel that tilts to any angle. There's 5 sets of acrylic paints. There's a canvas pad which contains actual canvas. You can see that's actual canvas and the front of it is gessoed. They provided a plastic palette and a pad of disposable palette paper. There's 2 palette knives, 10 paint brushes, and a color wheel. There's a link to this kit in the description below. This is the set of colors that I'll use for this painting. Out of all the different colors, these are probably the most useful. There's pastels and metallics, but you can see there's cerulean blue, there's yellow ochre, titanium white, lemon yellow. I think I'm going to tone the canvas with a color first, just to eliminate the white. And yellow ochre should work for that. I'll squeeze some out onto the palette. And I'll take one of these larger brushes, thin it out with some water. How thin you want this is up to you. Some people make it like watercolor, if you just want like a light color. So I'll test that out here. That looks pretty good, maybe a little bit thicker. Also, I turned this clip around so that the clip doesn't get in the way of the painting. That way I can film it easier. The purpose of toning a canvas like this is to eliminate the white, and it makes it easier to judge colors on because the white of the canvas will make a dark color look darker than what it actually is. Plus, psychologically, it gets you over the idea that you're going to ruin the canvas. You get color over the whole thing and you don't worry about it. Acrylics are very forgiving in that you can paint over them and they dry very quickly. So if you do make a mistake, you can go back in and correct it without having to wait too long for it to dry. I'm getting somewhat of a glare in here. I might have to adjust this. That's almost dry. I got rid of the glare by moving the light. Here's the reference photograph that I'll be working from. I figure I'll sketch it in with burnt sienna. It's a little bit darker than this yellow ochre. So there it is, burnt sienna. This porcelain bowl didn't come with the kit. It is from Meeden. There's a link to it in the description below. I do like having 2 containers like that. So you have one for dirty water, and then when you need clean water, you have it. So I'm looking at these brushes. I'll probably sketch with one of these smaller ones. I don't want a small detail one because I'll get too fussy. So the same thing, I'll thin some of this down. That way it makes it easier to brush it on. If it's super thick, it doesn't really spread as easy, and then when you go to paint over it, you might have some texture in there which you don't want. So I'm not worried about putting these shapes down in the right spot. I'm just going to start sketching, and I'm looking at like how far down this horizon line is. And this is starting to spread because it's wet. It doesn't matter. This is just a sketch. That's how you got to think of it. And the lemon comes to about here. This part of the lemon is maybe about halfway, a little bit more than halfway. So I'll put some indications of where I think these things should go. And then the right side of the coffee mug is about here, and maybe the handle. You can see that it's running. It doesn't really matter. I won't paint in the text on here. I'll just have the little tag on it's from the tea bag. So that's the bottom of the lemon. Got the indication of a shadow. And I think the top of the mug, maybe about here. Then the spoon. Ellipses are kind of hard to paint. I'll just rough that in there real quick. A lot of times people think you can, if you draw like a rectangle in perspective, and then each tip, like the outermost part of the ellipse, will touch the edge of that rectangular box. The inside of the handle has a little bit of opening here and it sort of slants at this angle. I'm seeing like a little bit of reflected color. This is like the lemon color in the coffee mug. All right, so the furnace just shut off. I don't know if you can hear that in the audio, but I can't stop painting just for the furnace. All right, so there's the tag. I think it's thinner than that. Yeah, maybe. There's a shadow. So I feel like this is faster than sketching with a pencil. Pencil has such a thin line and it gets caught on like the texture of the canvas. I feel like maybe my lemon is too wide or it has to go taller or something. It doesn't seem to fit in here. This is a nice and small easel. You fit it on a desktop. In another video, I talked about ergonomics in painting. It's really important not to work totally flat because your head will be tilted down for the entire time you're painting, and that will make your neck sore. So a small easel like this is a pretty good solution. You could even go in and sort of like indicate where the shadows would be just to sort of give you a feel for how this image will look. And that's the thing is, like I said, I don't care if this runs, and if I need to make corrections, I'll just go darker and maybe even thicker. I'm refining this ellipse. I think it's more narrow, and I'll put like an indication of the shadow. One interesting observation is the inside of the cup is dark on this side because the light's coming from over on the left, but that also means that the right side of the mug on the outside will be dark. I think maybe the issue with this lemon is it's not that close to the right side. That will make it look a little bit more squashed. I think I could probably start putting in some color. I have like the basic shapes sort of figured out. Maybe the angle of this spoon needs to change a little bit. I don't think it goes up that high either. It's about maybe there. I'll start mixing up some of the colors. This is scarlet red. I'll put the names of the colors on the screen. And this says mid yellow. I could probably use that to make the orange. This set comes with a palette knife, and I'll just mix up an orange color. This will be for the background, and it's not this vibrant. I'll probably have to dull it down a little bit, but I could make it as bright as I want. You think you would add like black to it to make it darker, but a lot of times I just add blue. So this is Prussian blue, and then there's cerulean. I guess I'll try the Prussian. It's similar to phthalo blue. It's a little bit different though. See how that made it darker? I think maybe there's a little bit more red. I think maybe this, what does that say? Crimson red? I believe it's similar to a cad red medium or maybe alizarin. I had just a little bit of this in there. I think I need to mix up more paint. I'm just trying to figure out what the basic colors are. I'll take this thick brush and just scrub some of that in there. I'm painting around the shapes of the spoon. It gets lighter on the left side, so I think a little bit of yellow and white. This is titanium white, and I'll just mix it with my brush as I go. It gives a sense of light when the left side is lighter than the right side, like there's light coming in from the left-hand side. I'm just dipping into the darker color as I need it. The background doesn't have to have a perfect blend. You can go back in for a second layer to fix it if you need to. The thing is, you can build it up in layers. You don't have to get it perfect the first time around. In fact, you really don't want to get too bogged down in the details the first time around because you might not have the shapes exactly the way you need them, and you're trying to perfect something that's just a sketch, if that makes any sense. So I got the background pretty much blocked in, and then I think maybe I'll do the background. So the background is like a grayish color, or I should say like the table color. I could start with black. I normally mix grays, but I'll just start with black to make it easier. I'll add some of this Prussian blue in there because very few things in life are like totally neutral. And I'll just quickly compare it to the photo. You can see there's more like magenta and blue in there. So I'll add some of this darker red and some of the Prussian blue, a little bit more blue. Now you can see the difference between this color, which is more purple, and then the neutral gray. So I'll test that out. It's not bad. And then I think the handle goes to about there. See, this kind of looks like too dark, and the handle actually has to get darker than that. So that's what I mean, like a white canvas would make this gray look even darker. And I probably could have even toned the canvas even darker than what I did. So one trick for painting shapes is to paint the negative shape. So I'm thinking about what is the shape of this opening here rather than what's the shape of the handle. And that's one way of like tricking your mind to seeing the shapes as they are. I'm trying to stick to using a large brush for as long as possible so I don't get too bogged down in details. It just makes painting go that much quicker. I think it's not too bad for the shape. I'll go around the lemon and I'll adjust the color as I need to. Like this gets a little bit lighter right here. I think I need to paint over the left side of this cup a little bit. I think there should be a little bit more space behind it. And the other thing too is you might want to pick up a bottle, like a mister like this, just so you can keep your paints wet. They start to get a little bit tacky. And when that happens, you just missed it and you can keep going. I'll just try to block in the rest of this gray before I move on. I feel like I need to mix up more of this. And I like these disposable palettes because they're super easy to clean up. I'll just brush this in quickly. I think the next thing I'll work on is the shadows. So I'll add more blue and the dark red into the gray color. Maybe a little bit of black. I don't normally use black, but it's a shortcut. It's not as dark as I need it to be. I'll add a little bit of each of these colors. The shadow starts about in the middle of the lemon, like right about here. And it seems to go up to about this section. Then it's like there's a shadow from the mug. So I'll put that in now. I forgot to do this little area of gray. I'll do that after I get this done. I feel like shadows are what make a painting work sometimes. It creates like a sense of depth. All right, so I'll get that little area of gray on the left. All right, so now the coffee mug is also gray, but I think it's warmer than the grays you see on the table because the coffee mug itself is kind of like a beige color. So for that, I'll add a little bit more yellow and some red. Definitely need more white. If you want to learn how to mix colors, I have a color mixing course. I also have a ton of free videos on YouTube where I demonstrate how to mix a bunch of different colors such as brown, purple, sky blue. My short form videos are where I match the colors of objects like apples and celery and stuff like that, so you can check that out while you're at it too. I feel like this needs to go lighter. Even though I match colors as close as I can for my demonstrations, in a painting, you don't have to get that accurate. This looks a little too dark, but I think I need to put it in just to see how it looks against this gray. Then, like I said, it's kind of like opposites. This side is light and this side is light. And then I'm looking at, I think this handle might be too wide, but that's the thing is that you fix it as you go. That might be right. The thing I think about too is I don't like leaving gaps between shapes. So on this left side, it's like this color of the mug overlaps the line that I drew. So there's no, like, I don't like it when there's like halos around everything is what I'm trying to say. Next, I'll do this darker shadow color, which is kind of close to what the table color was. And that color comes along the edge, right where the edge of this lemon is. I can see that like there's a lot of reflections, like subtle reflections going on here. Like this looks like the reflection of the inside of the handle. So I have to make that a little bit darker. So I add more black, need to squeeze out more Prussian blue. This still looks sloppy, but I feel like it's coming together. Like once you start blocking in the shapes, it doesn't look so rough anymore. There's always that beginning stage that looks messy. So I'm just adding more blue and more of the dark red. I forget what they called this. Crimson red. So this is kind of like a alizarin crimson. So that is a lot darker. It might be too dark. Let's put that in there. It's not too bad. Just a touch of white. So that's where I put it in right here. And I can use it on the handle. The handle gets pretty dark. I'm still using the big brush. I'm going to use that until I get everything filled in. And I think, oops, that's too thick. Yeah, I'll cut back in with the background color when I have a chance. As I said, there's a little bit of yellow in there from the lemon, but I think I could probably add it right now and see what it looks like. Maybe a little bit more orangey. It comes down to about here. I'll have to fix that up. I think it needs a little bit more gray here. I'm just trying to transition that into the lighter gray. Doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes it's nicer if you have brush strokes showing in there. What's weird is underneath here, this looks warmer. Oh, I think it's there's like the glaze. It sort of gets brownish on the bottom. I might not put that in. So I think that's not too bad. And there's a shadow from this tag, so I'll put that in. All right, so the other thing with this mug is I want to put the dark section in for the top of the mug. It helps to mix more volume. Like I didn't mix enough of this, and now I got to go back and sort of like mix more of it. But sometimes you just get carried away. There's some more subtle detail in this section, but I just want the basic value in there. Value is like how light or dark something is. All right, it's starting to look like a coffee mug. And now that I have like a dark color on here, I could do this section of the handle. And there's some interesting like subtle things around this part where the handle attaches to the mug. And for now, I'll just put like a middle transition in here. Very basic way to think about blending is like if you have two colors, you can mix a color that's in between those two colors and just place it in there. And then just sort of like smooth it out a little bit. That's a good start. I like how this gets darker here. It's another tip is you can use the corner of the brush, like just this edge here, to get into like tighter areas. Even though this is a big brush, you can get small little details in here like this. And I notice there's a little bit here that I forgot. It gets a little bit lighter, but I really want to move on to painting the lemon. And instead of washing that brush out, I'm just going to use this brush. So maybe a little bit of white in there will help. Again, you go through more white than any other color. So it helps to pick up an extra tube of this when you have a chance. And that's because most colors aren't totally pure. You have to add white to them. I'm noticing the lemon is a little bit more greenish too. So this is the light side of the lemon. Might need a little bit of red for this area right here. Yellow is a difficult color to paint because when you darken it, it goes green. And I made an entire video about why that is. There's a link to it in the description. This color by itself doesn't look right, but as you fill it in, it will make more sense. All right, I'm looking at it and it's starting to look like a lemon and a coffee mug. I think my lemon's too tall or something, or it has to go more to the left, but one step at a time. I think maybe it's this part of the lemon has to come out more. I noticed the transition has a little bit more warmth, so I'm adding a little bit of the red back in there. Before you change a color, it helps to remove it with a paper towel first before you rinse it out. That way you end up with less paint in your wastewater. I have an entire video about how to recycle your leftover acrylic wastewater. There's a link to it in the description below. I cleaned that out so that I can get a more pure yellow color for the lemon. I think this is lemon yellow, so why not use it to paint a lemon? The difference between this yellow and the other one is it's not as orange. I can put a little bit next to this, and you can see that has a little bit more of an orange tint to it. And I might start breaking out the smaller brushes, but like I said, I like sticking to the larger brushes for the beginning. And sometimes it helps to take a break and step back from the painting. That way you can kind of see like some of the flaws from a distance. Like when you're up close, it's harder to see it. So I'm trying to get this lighter section here, maybe a little bit more white. And I kind of add some of that other yellow in there. So that's what I mean about acrylics. You can paint over your mistakes. I didn't have to wait for this to dry. I mean, it dries pretty quick, so you can go over it. I think the thing is when it's in the light, it's more of this lemon yellow color. And then as it gets darker, it turns like a little bit more orange. Or I'll work some of the other yellow into it and maybe even a touch of the red just to warm it up a bit. So I think that has to go darker. I mean, if you look at that, it almost gets like a reddish brown color right here. The part of the handle that attaches to the mug, there's a lot of subtle stuff that happens in there. And this is where you can correct things where like I can correct the shape of this lemon just by painting the coffee mug. I also missed this part here where the opening in the handle touches the top part of the lemon, and I'm just trying to put that back in there. It's kind of tricky because like both the mug and the background are similar. They're both like grayish. And I'm talking about like fixing things as you paint the background. So I'm fixing the angle of the handle. That looks better. See, this is where you get into trouble using black, is because you think that things are gray, but if you look at like the highlight on this spoon handle, it has a warm color in there, and that comes from the background. And the top rim of the coffee mug has like a brown color to it. I'll just put that in there. I think maybe I'll cut back in there to fix the handle a little bit more. And I can also tweak the background so it's the color that I want. Get rid of some of the streakiness if I want to. I feel like this has to come down on the left side. Like you can see that it's a little bit too high. At this stage, I'm refining what I already have down on here. The odds that the first time around you got it exactly right are slim, so I go back in and add corrections, but you're also like adding in more subtle details. And that's what really builds up the image. There's different ways to make a painting. I mean, some people do paint like you would like a printer. Like you start at the top and go all the way down, and when you're done, you're done. But I kind of build it up in layers. At least that's one way that I work. I let this dry overnight, and one way that you can keep the paints wet is to use plastic wrap. It won't keep it wet forever, but it will work overnight. I find that the larger blobs of paint will stay wet, but these areas will probably be dry. What I do is I just scrape off the good paint onto a new sheet. That way I have all this extra room to mix paints. And sometimes you could just mix these together and you get like a grayish brown color, and you can use that for different areas of the painting. So that's about all that I want to take from this. The rest of this is pretty much dry. After looking at this a while, I can tell what needs to be fixed. A few of the things I'd like to correct is this needs to be darker on the right side. I already started putting that in there, and then there'll be a gradient over to the left. The coffee mug needs to get lighter. And I noticed that these grays really aren't that accurate. Like I think there should be a little bit more magenta in this gray, and it should go a little bit lighter. The coffee mug definitely needs to go much lighter on the left side, and on the inside, the spoon needs to be shaped up, and the lemon definitely needs a lot of work. So I'll probably do this in sections, and I'll start by mixing the background color. I'll get the background started, and then I'll work into the coffee mug. I don't think I'm gonna film like mixing the background color. I already kind of did that before, and that'll save us some time here. I've got these colors mixed up, and it's just a matter of brushing this on. I mixed up the lighter color for the left side of the background, and I think that's closer. It does dry darker. That's the thing about acrylics, is they dry just slightly darker. Most of the time that doesn't matter. If it dries a little bit darker, most people won't know that it's off. You got nothing to compare it against. Like you're not going to be looking at this painting and the still life at the same time. One thing I noticed too was the horizon line needs to be more level. So I'm trying to fix that. I've got this laid out backwards. I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. Like this dark color should be over here and this light color should be on the left, just so it would line up with what's going on in my painting. But as long as I keep it straight in my mind, should be okay. So this is more of the color in the middle. So I'll start working that in there. That was like the issue with the background. For one, this side needed to go darker, but I also think the colors were a little bit too saturated. It looks more natural with these colors. Then I can dip into the lighter color to fix this section. Gradients can be tricky to paint with acrylics because they dry so quick, but if you just feather it, it should be okay. All right, so I'll start working into the darker color. I'm not cleaning my brush off between these different variations because you can use that to your advantage. You just work a little bit more of the darker color in there as you go, and it should start to blend together. That little light section, I think the spoon should go up that high, but maybe I'll paint over it just so that there's no halo around the spoon. All right, so I think that background looks better. This looks like that should be smoothed out a little bit. I'll take a dry brush and just feather it a little bit. If I hold the print over the top, you can see, that's wet. If I hold the print over the top, you can see that's a better match than what I had before. I'm mixing up the coffee mug color. It's mostly white. It's like an off-white. It's hard to sort of judge what these colors are. Like that's too light. I think it needs more blue in there. You could check by holding your palette knife up, and it's kind of hard because there's glare on this. But I'm looking at this and my color is too warm, so it needs more blue, but you got to be careful. This blue is more potent than most blues. Another thing you can do is paint a swatch on a sheet of paper and compare it to your subject. Notice how much darker that coffee mug color is than the white of the paper. So I brushed some of that on there and you can see how much lighter that is. So I'll just go ahead and paint this in. Something else I wanted to fix is this tag is too wide. If you look at the photo, you can see that top edge of the tag doesn't cover the mug by that much. In fact, you can see the shape of the bottom here, and I'm trying to get that into this painting. So let's see if I can fix that. I think this is where it starts to taper over, and then I think the shadow comes down to about here. I like the texture of this canvas. It's not too coarse. It has just enough texture to grab the paint, which is something I like. Some brands have like what they call portrait canvas, which is smoother for that purpose. You can get more detail into it. So I think the inside of the mug would be the same. You have that color, you might as well paint in the other sections that are that color, and I think the inside of the mug is close. The handle has a couple highlights that are that light. I mixed up a darker color for the middle part of this mug, and I'll blend it into the lighter color. I'm mixing it up a little bit on my palette, just so it doesn't get too streaky. So I put this painting aside for a day or two because it was the holidays, and I put this saran wrap on top. These thick areas are still wet, so I'll be able to use that paint. So I thought about what I need to do to finish this painting, and I'm going to work on the spoon handle next, the coffee mug, and I'll fix this tag over here that's like part of the tea bag. And for the last step, I'll work on the lemon, which needs quite a bit of work. It looks like this color right here is fairly close to the dark edge of the spoon handle, maybe a little bit darker. I put in the final details and adjusted the color of the lemon. If you're looking to try out acrylics without having to invest too much money up front, this is a decent kit that contains all the basic tools. Here's the finished painting. There's a link to the auction in the description below. Up next, you can watch my video about 10 gift ideas for artists. Thanks for watching.